continue. I'm very excited about this section because I have been to Cameroon and collected there, and I thought it was fantastic. I can't wait to see what you have.
Great. I'll try to be a bit quicker. I could honestly talk for hours, so there's a lot to get through. So let me just see. I've got things in the way here. There we go. Okay. So essentially, welcome again to the second half of this presentation, and in this case, we're going to be talking about some freshwater habitats in Central Africa. To be more specific, we are looking at Central West Africa, so Cameroon, to be precise. And the area that we are looking at is essentially the area south of Douala. You can't really see it there, but Douala is the economic hub of Cameroon, a very prosperous, growing, rapidly developing city. And essentially, the areas that we looked at were all these dots. That's all the sampling points between the Sanaga River, which is a major watercourse in Cameroon, and the Cameroon estuary. It's got a few names: Douala estuary, and then I believe also the Wari estuary. And essentially, we're looking at this lowland area here, which is very coastal. You can say that we are looking at the lowland water, inland waters. We're not looking at the, very inland waters, which are quite different. And that's what I'm going to be focusing on today. You can see that in this area, it's very flat. There's lots of lakes that have formed in this area. This is Lake Ossa, and I believe this is Lake Mboli. Most of the sites that we are looking at today are draining into a river that is called the Ndonga River, and it's a major tributary into this Cameroon estuary, this Douala estuary. I think for the purposes of this, we'll just call it the Douala estuary. I think that's what we'll call it for this in this case. So that's what we're looking at, just so you have some understanding. This is a tropical area. And most of the rain falls between July and September. You do not want to be in this area in that time. We're talking 700 millimeters, the maximum mean monthly rainfall in August. That's really high rainfall. When we go, we usually go anywhere between December and February. To go in June is even a bit risky because all these places flood quite heavily. So yeah, essentially we're going to be covering a few different habitat types in this discussion. We're going to be looking at swamps, and these include your shallow headwater swamps as well as your swamp forest, which is, it's important to make the distinguish between those two. We also then look at the flowing streams, and we're going to look at flowing streams which are primarily under full riparian cover. And yeah, they're secondary, they're third or fourth order channels that have collected enough water to actually flow, and the gradient is such that they flow. We also look at some of these flowing streams in the open, so stuff that's got no riparian cover. And these are usually disturbed areas. You can kind of see the edges of one here. So where a road comes through the forest. Typically, you don't really get these open waters. We're going to be ending then the presentation on mangroves, looking at the Ndonga River itself. This is basically just before it becomes a proper mangrove, but you'll still have your estuarine species coming up here. And we'll just look at some of the different habitat types in the mangroves, which are also very cool. So essentially, ecological province-wise, we're sitting in Lower Guinea, and lots of species. There's some historical connections between Congo, the Niger, and we've just got a great mix of species here, over 550. So a lot of freshwater fish, a lot of estuarine fish, and big rivers, as you guys can tell with that kind of rainfall. So we'll start looking at the shallow swamps, and essentially get right to it. This is swamp forest. it's kind of uniform. No real big trees left. Unfortunately, we're close to Douala, and a lot of the big trees have been felled. Selective logging in this case. These areas look like they're, you'd be walking quite nicely underneath there, but essentially this whole area is inundated with water that looks like this. This is actually a hunter's path. You can see that he's cut here and he's been walking through this. And this is pretty much what it looks like underneath that swamp forest. You're talking very, very dense leaf litter. You're talking nice, broad-leaf trees. And I think this is something that I don't see enough in biotope aquariums, particularly ones with Afrosimian in them. You get a very common plant which is really easy to propagate in tropical areas, and that's Anthoclyster. And these leaves, I've even got a few growing at my house, and I'd love to see these leaves being used in an aquarium, or being looked at. It's essentially this big leaf is actually from an Anthoclyster. So you're looking at an area. It's very difficult to take photographs because it's dark underneath here, very swampy, not very deep water, but thick detritus. And yeah, these trees go. It's the Anthoclyster, and there's also a lot of raffia palm, so very wet area. So you can get an idea about what's feeding these swamps. It's what leaf material is feeding these swamps. This is pretty much the attire in the jungle. I used to wear full waders, but have decided no more waders in tropical heat, and I've been going just gumboots and shorts, and I haven't had any problems yet with parasites or anything like that. So this is pretty much how I look. I've got a bit of a bigger beard now from the lockdown, but from this whole staying at home thing, it's been great. Anyway, guys, we'll leave it there. Yes, I access these places in gumboots. I used to walk around barefoot. I've got colleagues that walk around barefoot, but it's not safe. But you can do it. There's not too many thorns, aside for the palm branches that can get you. But these areas are pretty not that many thorns basically. You don't need waders either. In my opinion, there is bilharzia. You can get bilharzia, but I haven't got it yet, and I've been doing this for some time. I haven't got it from there. In any case, we look at the swamps again, and some more of the what the biotope looks like. This is not mud. This is cut up, very fine, shredded leafy material, and on top of that fine leafy material, you have your clear water. If you disturb this, it becomes it takes long to clear. And obviously this occurs, within the raffia palm. This is a great example of the biotope, in my opinion. Another great aquatic plant which you see throughout this area is Lacimorpha senegalensis. That's this very broad-leafed plant. It actually grows in dense stands. And yeah, it's got little thorns in it. You can kind of see it here too. But that really kind of dominates a lot of the habitat, and yeah, that dominates this swamp. This is a swamp habitat. So I actually did take water chemistry. This was for a project, so we take these more seriously. And essentially, we're looking at a pH. We've got a mean pH. Between all the habitat types that we looked at, we have got a mean pH of 5.1. So that really just shows that kind of very different from what we were looking at earlier. We've got a lot of decomposing material in here, pushing down the pH. A lot of carbon getting released into the water, reducing the pH. Also, I didn't take dissolved oxygen, but there's low dissolved oxygen in this water as well, and really low conductivity. It varied between the actively flowing systems, which we'll get into later. Those were about 11 to 12, and in the lakes the conductivity was slightly higher, between 27 and 41 microsiemens. So we're talking very clean water, very low dissolved solid content in this water. I mean, my reverse osmosis is getting about 5 microsiemens, so between 5 and 10. So this is basically pure water, really good stuff. And there you can see some of the higher temperatures. The open lakes I found were a bit warmer because they're in the direct sunlight. I didn't touch on any of the lakes in this, unfortunately, but just for your interest. This type of habitat is absolutely jam-packed with Afrosemian ali. This is this species, habitat preference. You can find them, distributed throughout that the entire extent of that habitat that you saw that you can see in the background. You'd find about 15 to 20 individuals per square meter, or let's say a bit bigger. Let's say per 2 square meters, you get about 15 to 20 individuals of these Afrosemian. Really colourful little fish. Again, my photographs don't really do it justice. We move out those shallow swamps and we move into the flowing swamps. This is essentially areas where the water is able to generate velocity, so where you have steep valleys. This is where you get your swamp forest. So it's kind of let's say an area that's about 20 meters wide in this case, and it's just full of these braided channels with the water flowing through these braided channels. You'll notice, and we'll touch on it a bit later, that there are no anubias in any of these biotopes that we're going through. In any case, this habitat type is again deep, dense leaf litter, not as dense as the shallow swamps, but the flowing swamps, the swamp forest with the right gradient. You get this beautiful clear system, lots of dense detritus underneath. I mean, this picture actually looks like it could be from an aquarium. If you look at the top, you'll see some of our suspect fish that we're going to be talking about. And yeah, essentially that's the kind of biotope that you got here. Again, a lot of Anthoclyster, lots of big leafed material coming into the bottom. And in this case, in this type of habitat, I actually sampled Chrome Afrosemian. Unfortunately, I didn't get any live samples. Chrome Afrosemian, yes, that's right. And then your Epiplatus, Infra fasciatus, as well as your Epiplatus grahami. This is Chrome Afrosemian volcanum, which actually came from another channel, not this exact one in the back, but these fish were sampled in this swamp forest that you can see behind. This actually came from the Mangrove basin, so not really related to this, but relatively similar habitat type. The Chrome Afrosemian, great little fish. Also within this habitat type, you got your Bonitochromis, I believe it's Nigrogasalis, and this is, I can't emphasize enough how this picture does no justice to this fish. This Bonitochromis it almost has a purple color when you initially bring it out of the water, and iridescent colors of reflections on the scales. So even these colors here were bright red. So it's just a fantastically colored cichlid that you get in these flowing swamps. Another great fish that you get is your Polycentropsis, your leaf fish, and you commonly encounter these in the flowing water as well as the margins of the river, where you get them in the sides with all the leaf litter, as well as some marginal vegetation sometimes, which you'll see some of the marginal vegetation. Some of the more cryptic species that we get, your electric catfish. Don't want to be messing around with these too much. I know some guys do keep them. And then you get your two knife fish. You get your Xenomystis and your Papicranus. I think is the name. Papicranus alpha, that's it. And these are your knife fish, African knife fish. And then you also get your Parachenoplanus, very similar to the one that you get in the Zambezi, except obviously different species. But just to show you some of the more cryptic species, I've actually got these on video before, so they're not necessarily nocturnal, but when you do go out at night, we obviously work in a big team of guys, and the herpetologists are always telling me that these fish are everywhere when you go out at night. So we do go out at night sometimes, but I don't have any photographs to show you guys. I think recently also, I think Joe Cutler did it himself. He talked about it in his webinars that he was giving, given from the Gabon. And that is that, to catch these fish in the night is actually quite easy. You can walk up to them and just kind of scoop them up, particularly the small killifish like the epiplatus. They just relax in there and you can go scoop them. In any case, we'll move on now to the flowing streams, the more bigger river systems, and you can see your Anthoclyster. This is a disturbed habitat. There you see your Anthoclyster. These get really big, and these are the things that are falling into the river channel. Another really common plant is this thing's called musanga, another forest species, and also supplying important leafy material into the river. These rivers, these ones that we looked at, it's all about the riparian cover. If you do not have sufficient vegetation cover, you're going to lose those fish species. So one of the most important things that we are dealing with in these areas is maintaining these riparian reserves, establishing them, managing them, making sure that we can maintain this incredible diversity of fish, because they're obviously directly reliant on that riparian vegetation, particularly the hanging vegetation. A lot of these fish are feeding on things that are falling into the river from the forest above, the forest canopy. That's it. Like the epiplatus, they're perfectly designed to eat those little insects and stuff that fall into the river. Essentially, he has another beautiful, one of my favorite trees. This is Leuphera alata, and these love to grow in the riparian corridors. Essentially, these are riparian plants. So these are the kind of plants that we're trying to promote to grow and to reach maturity, so that other plants can grow underneath them. It's typical forest ecology stuff. Within these open channels, sometimes you get open channel where you'll have some disturbance. And you'll see this. There is some proliferation in aquatic plants, not to the extent that you get in the Zambezi, but still to some degree. You have your submerged nymphea, beautiful, nice sandy substrate as well. And I believe this could be a type of Commelina or a Persicaria. I'm really not good with my tropical plants yet. It's definitely something that we are looking into. We're definitely learning some new stuff every day, So essentially, you've got an underwater still shot from a GoPro. Unfortunately, can't show you guys the videos we're doing live and streaming and whatnot, so it's not easy to do that. But here you can see one of the most common fish, I believe, in Lower Guinea. If you don't find this fish in your sample site, you've definitely done something wrong, or there's something wrong with your with the river, So this is Glycinus longipinus. There's a nice male specimen, and as I say, this is the top one. This fish is found throughout the tropics. I do believe that the name is now Brian longipinus. You must excuse me if I use the wrong names or pronounce them correctly, but this fish is very common, and I believe it belongs to a species complex, which is going to be sorted out at some point. So we're probably going to see a separation of these little beautiful little tetras. I do believe this is available in the hobby. Your next type of fish that kind of looks like the well-vegetated habitats is your Comedo tilapia. This is Comedo tilapia bentheri, another species complex, and again, the photographs don't do it justice. This is definitely one of the most beautiful cichlids that you can find. When you're talking about iridescence, when this is erect and it's not happy, it's completely iridescent. It's like a silver iridescent. It's just absolutely beautiful to see. Not so much in the photographs. Some more of the underwater habitat that you get in these flowing systems. You have a nice mixture of submerged wood. There you go, showing again the importance of the riparian vegetation. You have roots coming in from the channel edge. But you mostly have your sandy substrate, but sometimes you do get gravels when the flow is a bit higher. These are flowing systems, so that's what you just got to see. I'm also not an underwater photographer, so these are actually screenshots from a GoPro, but we'll get there at some point. More, habitat types that you get in these flowing systems. Lots of leaf litter that actually accumulates around the woody vegetation. I'm going to move a bit quicker because I am way over. Essentially, a nice flowing system with some dense marginal vegetation, and in this, a lot of guys are having trouble believing me, but you get your butterfly fish, and I do have some videos to back it up. And essentially, this fish was actually captured in this channel, and they survive in these type of areas, like this. It's either that they were forced there when I was trying to catch them, or that they're actually in that habitat type. So yeah, that's the butterfly fish. Really nice fish that you get in this region. A very unique fish. Then moving more towards where the rivers flatten out a bit, you can see your Lacimorpha on your side, the Lacimorpha senegalensis on the side, and a bit more of an open channel. As the rivers get bigger, they tend to be wider and more open. And that obviously allows for more vegetation to grow. So there you can see some nice nymphaea in the open channel with raffia palm, Lacimorpha. There's actually a flower of the Lacimorpha. Underwater, again, you have this interesting Persicaria commelina type plant and some submerged aquatic nymphaea, which grow out eventually to be emergent. In some of the pools in these areas, you get your, where everything collects. You have nice dense leaf litter in these areas with woody debris, and this is typically not very fast flowing. In the more flowing channels, here's another screenshot. You get your first fish, your topwater fish or lamp-eye, and this is your poropanchax. That's what this species is. That's what this genus is. I'm just trying to find mine. It's poropanchax stigma. Here we go. And there's a nice photo of one. They occur in the flowing water with varied substrate. In the sides of these channels, these flowing channels, in some of the denser vegetation in between the sticks, you do find your Mulibias and Sylvia as well. And then, we can't forget about your pelvic acromis. They're also known to occur in these open channels, amongst the submerged woody vegetation, feeding off the detritus. These are quite abundant in these types of channels. If you subscribe to my YouTube channel, you can see some of the other biotopes with the video. This is just another type of channel, the water system that you get in this area. As you can see, no anubias, quite interestingly, that same Persicaria and nymphaea, and full canopy cover, forest canopy cover. Some more nymphaea, another very special system. A lot of submerged aquatic nymphaea, and obviously your full canopy cover again. This one was actually over gravel substrate, gravel and detritus. And as you can see, these areas are heavily utilized by a wide diversity of fish species. We're in the tropics, so we're talking a lot of fish. I think this is your Bonitochromis. It's either the Bonitochromis or the Bonito or kind of tilapia. I'm leaning towards Bonitochromis. So this is a still shot, so from GoPro. Another Tenopoma, just to kind of highlight, the nice species that are using these areas, these habitat types, as far as the wide diversity of body plants. This is it's called a reedfish. I'm not going to pronounce the name. It's quite common in the aquariums. This is migratory, so the fish are actually utilizing these habitat types away from the marine environment as migratory places that they can migrate to and grow large. Also some nice mammarids. I'm not going to get into too much of that. And a rheophilic species that occurs with the submerged wood. This is your Fructura species. And your snakehead. So I don't want to forget that. And your Masticebulus here. I mean, we can't forget that. Just wanted to highlight, what kind of the very wide diversity of fish we get there. It's unfortunate, but this is the best photograph I've got of a very special habitat or biotope type. Essentially, this is a small little floodplain pool situated underneath a great canopy, a full canopy of mature forest. And basically, what I'm trying to highlight by when I'm saying this is that the requirements of this biotope are incredibly specific. And that kind of lends to, showing you what kind of fish that you can expect in it. Highly specialized or unique habitats produce very unique fish, like this Fundulu Panchax. This is the only time we sampled all those different sites looking for endangered fish and rare fish, and we only found this fish at one location. So that just goes to show how unique that habitat type is when you do find it. These are wild caught specimens, but I do believe people keep them in the trade, and I think that these are absolutely beautiful. I was just delighted to encounter these. As I said again, incredibly unique habitat type, not found very often, and these have got complex life cycle. Just to touch on a bit more about how we sample some of these fish, we use minnow traps, very common thing. You can order them online quite easily, and then we also use a fight net. This is a very poorly set fight net, but these work. They do work well. You get some of your cryptic species as well, some of your nocturnal species, and you've obviously got to be very careful when you're setting a trap like this. You don't want to drown any animals, so we all obviously take care not to do that as well. This exact trap actually called a terrapin, which I subsequently let go. But in any case, this is some of the methods that we use, as well as electrofishing. On the last habitat type, and that's the mangroves. Essentially, these are the lower ends of all the rivers. This is where they all collect, and you can see an extensive mangrove system in this area. It's just enormous. I mean, you can't see the end of it when you get up there. And the reason that this image is so pale is because of something called the Hamatan, and that's where a lot of dust comes in from, I believe, the Kalahari, and that's what makes this kind of opaque. It comes in once a year, and it makes like an opaque landscape. It's a lot of dust. It's very dusty. But essentially, these are very green mangroves, very uniform. If you're lucky enough, you can get into the low tide, and essentially those swamps that we were looking at are situated here, and they have an outlet directly into these mangroves. So this becomes completely flooded when the tide comes in, and you've got to be quick when you're getting out, because you don't want to be in there when the tide comes in. It's quite a mess of sticks and wanting to get in there. So essentially, we were fortunate enough to get there in the low tide, and we were able to sample these kinds of habitats. This is what one of those habitat looks like when it gets a bit deeper, a bit more closer to the sea. And there are some of the fish that you get there. You get your Apocalestes, Spelauchin. This is a female. Unfortunately, I didn't get a nice male. But these were very common in this mangrove zone. Another common fish is your palmatic tilapia. They get quite big, and you'll catch them in cast nets, in the deeper channel. And then, last but not least, your little very common amongst the mangroves. I think it's common across the world. I just thought I'd end on this one. Very strange fish to find. This is a sole, and yeah, this one's the last fish that I got in the mangroves. And that is that. I'm really fairly well on time. So thank you very much for listening. Yeah, if you want to contact me to discuss something, you can contact me on my email. You can also contact me on Facebook. I'm quite active on Facebook, so you can find me there. Yes, but thank you very much. What is that?
Great. So Russell, I just had a few questions for you here, based on some of the things in your presentation. I did an expedition with a group to Cameroon a few years back, and we traveled around, collected there, and I took a little video as well. And I'm just really interested to see your information on these habitats. Especially wanted to ask you about this riparian cover, because some of the habitats we saw there, the forest had been cut down since the last time people had visited, and the river channel was totally exposed. And in one or two of those, it was absolutely overgrown with like blanket weed with algae. And I'm just wondering if that's something you've seen, or what are the effects on a degraded biotope once the forest cover is gone? You said a lot of those fish species can't survive anymore without the forest cover.
Yeah, so essentially, the second you lose that forest cover, you lose your fish. They don't occur. So the maintenance of the forest cover is so important. We're not only talking direct cover from predators. Because sometimes I like to imagine a little kingfisher sitting in the top of a tree. If there's a lot of riparian cover, he's not going to be able to get to his prey easily enough. So that's just a good example, a kingfisher or a fish eagle or something like that. So that's just to show you as an example of the cover. The riparian vegetation also provides that woody material that falls into the river, which also provides cover for the fish, within the fish community. On top of that, the riparian cover blocks sunlight, so it actually allows the water to be cooler. It's the second you lose that riparian cover, you lose your cover to hide from predators. You lose your cover to actually breed. Hide your young. Actually, the substrate in which the young are breeding on. You increase the water temperature. And then, once you start doing that, you change things like pH, you change things like the availability of dissolved nutrients. You change the river system for the worse, and you lose the fish. So,
right.
Yeah, that's it. They move out.
Yeah, so, I mean, in those channels, all we saw were Hemicromis elongatus, loads of them. No other fish in there. And I think there was some runoff too from the local farms was making a big algal bloom there as well. So yeah, so this is a huge concern, that the forest loss also leads to biodiversity loss in the streams and the channels underneath them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so. A couple of other things. Natasha was just asking, what are the temperatures like in these forest areas? Does it get very hot, very humid?
Yeah, this is just north of the equator, so it's very hot. And underneath the good forest, the mature forest, and the swamp forest, it's incredibly humid too. So we've got some measurements. I just don't know them offhand. I don't even have my cell phone on me, so let me grab it. But it's pointless for me to find it. Sorry. Basically, it approaches 100% humidity, and we're talking 30 degrees Celsius as well. So it's hot and humid, and yeah, it's great to work in the rivers because you can just cool off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just one other thing, I guess, is about the butterfly fish in the channels. Or were they actually in flowing water or fairly fast flowing water, or they're only in the calm areas?
So I suspect that they were hiding behind the woody debris in the river. I suspect that's the habitat type that they were using. So essentially they were anywhere where I mean, when I say I caught a lot, I mean we caught a lot of those butterfly fish. In the Mangrove Basin, the lower Mangrove Basin, the tributaries we were looking at, there were so many of these butterfly fish. And again, the herpetologist guy who was going out and collecting frogs and crocodiles and whatnot, he would see these butterfly fish everywhere. And we were typically working in swamp forest that was flowing, so within those braided channels. So to answer your question, I would say quite strongly or quite confidently that those butterfly fish are using that flowing habitat. But as I say, sampling bias is another thing. I may have pushed those fish in that area, or maybe my colleagues spooked them with this light. So until we actually get a video of them underwater using that habitat, then we'll confirm it 100%.
So Russell, there's just a couple of final questions. Just one on that floodplain pool with the special Fundulipanchax species in it. What species was that? And also, why is that habitat so special for its complicated life cycle?
So, yeah, there's okay. So that I think is Fundulipanchax cribionus, I believe, to my knowledge.
So from the creamy region, okay.
Yes, so I think it would be distributed. I think it is an endangered species listed on the IUCN, and I do think that this one is distributed into the south, so near Creedy. But a lot of work's been done in these areas, and things are being separated. As we speak, things are being separated. And what makes these habitat types unique is everything needs to be in place for a habitat like that to be present. You have to have, just like we showed in the Zambezi system, you have to have a system that is able to flood and is able to recede slowly, that flood. So that that his habitat can be inundated, that the habitat that can be connected, that they can spread. And then also, on top of the flooding, these systems need to be isolated too. So these little isolated pools on the side in the floodplain aren't actually connected to the active channel. So they're only flooding. So they're only flooding when during high discharge events, during high rain precipitation events. That's when these little pools are flooding. On top of that, you need the riparian cover, and if you don't have all those boxes ticked, good hydrology, decent land cover, and then your riparian cover, you're not going to have that fish. Which is kind of
so are those
in trouble.
Are those fish actually swimming in from other areas when it's higher water, or do they lay their eggs and the eggs lay dormant on the forest floor? Or what is happening there? Because obviously it's flooding, there's water coming in, then it's receding, and there's a pool left there, and then it's going to flood again at some time, right?
Yeah. So to answer you, I'm not confident in my answer, in the sense that I don't know Fundulipanchax cribionus' life cycle. I do know that Fundulipanchax have very complex life cycles. As you say, some of the eggs have to be desiccated, have to be exposed for, desiccated for a certain amount of time before they can be inundated again and actually hatch. So, but if you think about where these fish occur and how these would be spreading, I would imagine that it is very related to the flooding. I would say that it has to be related to the flooding. That's how they're moving, around the floodplain. But yeah.
So Russell, we'll have to wrap it up soon. But I just wanted to make a comment that this is really fantastic information for the many people who want to make West African biotopes. A lot of those fish, although they may not be the exact same species, they're very similar to some species that come from Nigeria other river systems that are in Nigeria and that are actually commonly available in the trade. So some of these species, or at least other species from the same genus, I think it's very doable to make some Cameroon-style biotopes. Some of the plants are available, certainly the materials, a number of the fish, and now with the view that you've given, especially the underwater views, I think this can be very helpful to people who want to try to simulate these habitats and hopefully spread awareness and a love for these habitats and have people really care about what happens to them.
That's it. I mean, you know, these habitats, the forest tropical habitats, are disappearing, you know, very quickly. So, you know, it's important that we have some kind of awareness about that and about these fish and about how delicate their habitat is as well as their life cycle. You know, and I know it's definitely worthwhile to try and understand how these fish operate. And in that case, you know, guys keeping fish like Fumili planchats in the aquarium can definitely provide some, you know, insight into what the requirements of these fish are. You know, that maybe in the future we can actually potentially protect these things, you know, going forward.
I think that's a really great point, Russell. That's a great point about the fact that there could be possible research applications for biotopes in the aquarium biotopes that are rather hard to study in the wild. Like, for example, the life cycle for killifish. I mean, there are loads of killifish clubs, and they get very much into where the specific habitat is, the specific water parameters there. And they, since they experiment in breeding and so on, in captivity, they could contribute a lot, I think, to the body of knowledge on these organisms and the larger habitats that they live in. So, Russell, I'd like to just thank you so much for this, and I'm just going to pass on to Natasha now. So we're going to wrap up. Thank you so much for your presentation. We appreciate it. This is the first time I've seen many of these habitats myself. I'm just going to pass on to Natasha now to wrap up with a few words about the BIOTOPE Aquarium project.
Well, I will be short. I want to thank you, Russell, for your presentation. This was really unique stuff. I appreciate the good photography you've done and the drone photography, so we can see these biotopes from above, and the underwater photography, so people can really see and understand how this underwater world looks like. And and I hope very much these places will stay intact as long as possible, so our children will be able to see them one day and not be afraid that this fish will disappear, which probably will be the case. Well, once again, thank you so much, and I want to invite everyone to BIOTOPE Aquarium platform and enjoy the biotopes and aquatic life with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. I think I'm going to end it then.
Yes.
Thanks, Natasha.